Hello there, fellow truth seekers. Doug Foster here again, coming to you. Tonight I want to talk about human atrocities. And the reason I'm kind of bringing this subject up, I've seen a YouTube video, and it was talking about, of course, I agree about the holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter and stuff like that being pagan, but it was talking about like the people that originally came here, like to Plymouth, how they ended up massacring Indians and stuff like that, and they talked about how horrible it was, white men killing the Indians, and it's a lot of times. They want to try to make it a one-sided thing about one race killing another race and all that, which is horrible. But it's not a matter of race. It's a matter of the human heart. And it's, humans have been killing humans and massacring, enslaving, and it's humans. It has nothing to do with race. It's just that human beings have, are in general, awful towards one another. And we can look at history and see this over and over again. I mean, that it's not just a racial thing. I mean, look at the Bolsheviks over in Russia under Lenin and Stalin. They killed tens of millions of their own people. The Cultural Revolution in China, under Mao Zedong, they killed tens of millions of their own people. The Napoleonic Wars, and he killed, bukus of people. The Catholic Church, the Inquisitions, which was against their own belief, supposedly their own believers or Christians, and they're supposed to be Christian, but yet they killed millions and millions of Christians because they would not deny the Messiah. Then you do have, cross-racial killing one another, but I mean, the African people, they commit genocide against their own race. The Native Americans, they, killed one another, between tribes and stuff like that. The point I'm trying to make here is that it is in all humans to have the ability to commit atrocities. I mean, if you look at, say, just as an example, Nazi Germany, I mean, I'm sure most of those people there that ended up, going along with the atrocities that they committed against, like, the Jewish people and, and racial stuff, against, the black people and stuff like that, it was, those people, most of them, before they got caught up in this, would have probably said they were good people and they didn't want to kill nobody. But because of the nature of humans, they get mesmerized by somebody like a Hitler that comes along, and they start pumping out this narrative about this group over here is oppressed, is getting over on us. They're stealing our wealth. They're doing this or they're doing that, and they get everybody turned against them. Same thing with the Bolsheviks, this group over here is, they're traitors, they're stealing bread out of your mouth. The Chinese, during Mao Zedong when the communists took over, I mean, at one time, they said, oh, it's the merchants, or it's the elitists, the people that own businesses and that were intellectuals, and so everybody turned on them and killed them. And then they said, oh no, it's the small business people, the little merchants. Everybody turns on them and kills them. And then they say, oh no, it's the farmers, and and then they turn on them and kill them. Well, by the time it's said and done, you got tens of millions of people killed. And so this is not a race thing. This is a human thing. And I got a few scriptures that I want to read here that talks about this kind of stuff. One here, let's see. I want to go to Jeremiah. And this is chapter 17. Chapter 17, verse 9. Get this here. All right. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doing. He can search it out, but when you hear what that says right there, it's the heart of man that is desperately wicked, that does these atrocities. And it has nothing to do with race, it just has to do with wickedness. The heart of men. And so, when we look at these kind of things that's going on, I mean, we have to look at it from, even if it's one race, doing it against another one, it really doesn't come down to a racial thing. It comes down to the wickedness of these people. And, their lust and their evil desires. Let's see. I'm going to look here at Proverbs chapter 24 and 2. For the heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. For their heart studieth destruction. Excuse me. All right, now I'm going to go here to Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. I mean, so whatever a person, begins to think in their heart wickedly, then that's what they become. That's what they are. And even to the point of these atrocities that people commit. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 3. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live. And after that they go to the dead. I mean, the Father's telling us here over and over again that the problem has nothing to do with race. It has to do with what's right here. And so these people, now granted, generally there's leaders of these people that are the ones that lead them into doing this stuff. Maybe on any given day, it'd be just like somebody you walk by, your neighbor or something, and nicest person you ever want to meet. But under the right circumstances, with the right people leading over them, I mean, look at how our leaders in this country, have divided us along those same things. Racial lines, gender lines, whatever. Division. And of course they have a motive behind it. And of course that motive, I believe, is, to bring this country down to its knees. And of course, the Father allows it because this is a wicked nation. All right, and so, whenever he blesses a nation and then they, turn wicked like this nation has, then judgment starts coming on. And he begins to take away that blessing and that hedge of protection And then ultimately people began to go into madness and stuff. And like I said in Deuteronomy chapter 28, when it talks about the blessings and the cursings, the curses, that's what happens. If they begin to do these things and they start getting wickeder and wickeder, it leads to madness ultimately, and then to atrocities. Is the final outcome of it, and that's what we're going to see eventually. I mean, we ain't really seeing the full brunt of it yet, but look at these cities, these big cities and stuff, where it's just free for all, and murder running rampant, and these people that are, like I say, that are in power, I believe that they're doing this so that it'll push people to a point of desperation that they'll be willing to give up their freedoms and stuff for security. And of course, Benjamin, even though I'm not a big fan of the founding fathers as such, because they were all deists and Freemasons and Illuminati and stuff like that, but Benjamin Franklin did have a lot of things that he said that did make sense and that was true. That if you are willing to give up one of your freedoms for security, you'll have neither one. You'll have no freedom and you won't have no security. Because the ones that are promising you security are the ones that are going to be, turn into a bunch of tyrants when you don't have the freedom to stand up against them anymore. And that's kind of how it begins. I mean, if you look at, like I say, as a sort of a modern example of how people can go from being, just regular people to being, led to doing things that nobody would ever believe they would be capable of doing. Of course, that would be Germany. But, the reason that stuff like that happens is because of these people at the top. And, of course, they use, Hitler and those people used a lot of occultic practices. One of them was mesmerism. I mean, Anton Mesmer was a German from the early 1700s that wrote a thesis while he was in college on mesmerism, or on how to basically hypnotize people and how you could heal. His thesis was about healing people using this practice. But he took it to a higher level than that once, he got beyond college and all that. And plus two, he had ended up being, by the medical establishment, said he was a charlatan, that nobody was being healed through his practices. But he took it to a higher level than most people understood, to where he began to experiment using metals and stuff like that in people to enhance the ability to mesmerize people or put them into hypnotic trance. And so it's been kind of established that Hitler and his Nazi cohorts, Himmler and Goebbels and all these other ones, they practiced this stuff. About how to mesmerize people in large crowds. I mean, that was one of the things Anton Mesmer had done. He was doing it to large groups of people. And he proved that you could, basically kind of hypnotize large groups by, and we know that Hitler was bad about putting metals into water, into drinking water, and other stuff they were doing. Oh. Sorry about that, folks. Phone ring. But, so the practices of, this stuff on people and getting large groups of people together and then pumping them up, getting them riled up, getting them stirred up, and giving them a focus on a certain group, because they had come out of a really hard time after World War I, and so they, and the world, the victors, over Germany. It really, treated them harshly. I mean, after World War I, really more harshly than they should have, to the point where the people were, almost starving to death. And that kind of stuff would make, already put people in a bad disposition to where they want to come and, especially if some guy comes along that is able to reinvigorate things. Look, I'm going to get things back to going. I'm going to make you, put bread on your table, but you got to listen to me. You got to follow what I say, to accomplish this. And it just kind of spirals out of control. And I'm not saying that this is the kind of thing that's been going on throughout history with everybody that commits atrocities. There's a lot of like genocides and stuff like that where these, groups, for example, in Africa, like the Houthis and the Tutsis and all these different tribes or whatever, that they've been fighting against each other for hundreds or even thousands of years, and so they have this deep-seated animosity. And if one figures he's got an advantage, then they go attack the other ones, and they'll wipe out whole tribes and stuff like that. And this stuff is still going on everywhere. We see this kind of stuff. You can look historically going back. I don't know that there's been a time in history where there hasn't been some kind of conflict going on. Going back, to after the flood. When Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, and from that point on, it seemed like that there was some kind of a conflict between people going on from then on out up to this day. And when you look at America, from our inception as a nation, we've been in some kind of conflict. Or war. From the Revolution, the War of 1812, the Spanish-American War, or the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Indian Wars, the Spanish-American Wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and on and on and on, and little conflicts all over. And then, so we're not an exception. If you look at Rome, Rome was constantly conquering somebody. If you look at the Greeks, same thing. The Medo-Persians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians. There has been a war or conflict going on. Sometimes it was against other races of people. Sometimes it was against their own people. So, this is not, it really doesn't come down to being a racial, race thing. It's a human thing. And humans are, capable of all kinds of atrocities. We've seen it over and over and over and over again. And it comes down to that scripture I just read about the heart being desperately wicked. It's, it's a wicked heart that brings this stuff about. Okay, now I want to read some from John chapter 8, verse 44. It says, and this is, of course, he was talking to the scribes and the Pharisees, but this applies to wicked people in general. But it was just, kind of pointing out the obvious when it comes to them. It says, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." So he's the father of murderers, been a murderer from the beginning. And of course, so he wants to put that into any and everybody that he can. And so that's where it originates in the heart of men. Satan plays on it, tries to get people to act on it. And if the lust, and a lot of times it's driven by one person's that wants to rule over people and be the emperor, God emperor or whatever over everybody else. It comes from their lust for power and possession, to own everything or control everything. And we can see this kind of thing arising, now. I mean, with this New World Order stuff and the World Economic Forum and the globalists, that's their agenda, is to bring it to that kind of point. But what ends will these people go to do that? There's no telling. I mean, they would, bring us to a world war. They have no problem with that, because I feel like most of those people are probably possessed, they are possessed, or they may even be fallen entities. I mean, they can appear, some of them can appear as humans. I mean, it's not a an impossible thing. So some of these, but I think it's more that there are entities, like when you read about the king of, the prince of Tyre and the king of Tyre. Well, the prince of Tyre was talking about the ruler of Tyre, but the king of Tyre was this entity that was actually the one that kind of controlled it. One of the dark powers of darkness. And then, in Daniel, where Gabriel was bringing a message, and he said that he was contending with the prince of Persia, and Michael came and helped him overcome this prince. So, these entities, a lot of times they have territories, and they're the ones really kind of manipulating things, behind the scenes through humans. And you get these, these elitists that want to control the world, and they're the ones that in Revelation it talks about how they give their power over to the beast, to rule with the beast 1 hour, and they're of one mind. Well, it's these people, these elitists, and these, because it says they have no kingdom, but they come into their kingdoms 1 hour with the beast. So these are people that probably have all along been controlling it. It may even be Nephilim, that some of these, families are Nephilim bloodlines. They can trace their heritage way back, and they probably have fallen, because in Daniel it talks about they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Well, who's the they? Just mingling themselves with the seed of men. Well, these fallen entities, they've been doing it since Genesis 6. So it's these people, and it's been this way all along, going through different cultures, different, people groups. They all have these entities pretty much ruling over their territories. And they're the ones that stir them up. And some of these entities, don't really get along with each other. They kind of work in a loose confederation because they have an agenda to destroy mankind, but at the same time, they want to kind of, be a bigger dog than the guy over here, and they'll sometimes get into conflicts and bring two countries together, the opposing countries to war with each other, stir them up. And then in Revelation, where it talks about the 4 angels, or fallen Malachim, that were kept under the Euphrates River, they were bound under there for a year, a month, a week, a day, to go out and draw all these armies, to stir them up, basically, to go around and get them stirred up. Well, I think we're kind of seeing that now. With what you see going on over there in Ukraine and all that. I think, and plus the, China, flexing, and the United States, it seems like our government is determined to get us into a world war. That's these entities that are stirring this stuff up. But they're only stirring up what's already in these people's hearts. And it doesn't matter what their race is. It has nothing to do with that. And it never has. It just has to do with the wickedness in people. You know, the human heart that makes people capable of doing these atrocities. And so, yeah, it's bad. It's bad when anybody kills anybody or stirs up this kind of stuff for people to get drawn into it. And so, I just kind of wanted to kind of put that out there about how that's a form of trying to stir stuff up right there, even though people may be well-intentioned when they talk about it, because it has been, again, the victors write the history. So our history is skewed in 10 ways from Sunday, as the old saying goes. And it's not just American history, but world history, because all through the ages, everybody's kind of wrote the history to suit their narrative. Whoever was in power. And so to find really what the truth is, a person would really have to be a deep scholar and, spend, bukus of time digging out, historical documents and stuff that people that really were kind of neutral in it could write it. That's just looked at it from an outside kind of perspective. Maybe you would get some truth, but whenever it comes to, say the Romans, of course they're going to write history that's going to be favorable to them, and the same with the Babylonians and the Persians and the Medes, and every one of them's going to have their version of what happened. So it's no different here that the Pilgrims and all were going to be put in a good light, and the Native Americans in a bad light, and but in truth, both of them had issues. And if you look at the Native Americans as far as among themselves, they were war. Some of them did. That was pretty much their existence, was warring with one other, tribe or another. And so this is, like I say, this is not something that is just a white thing, or Native Americans, or the Hindus, or the Chinese, or the Caucasians, or the Africans, or the blacks, or anybody else. It is the human nature. And so we can't let these people try to always be stirring it up and making everything about race. We need to make it focus on the humanity, that it's humans, the problem. All humans. Like I just said there, in Proverbs, or in Jeremiah, that the heart of man is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. And of course, that's the Father telling us this. This ain't my telling you this. This is the Scriptures saying this. And I think the one who created us knows our condition better than we do, and how we really are. And so, because people won't, like I said before, you have to come to terms with this about, and acknowledge what you really are before He can deliver you from it. And it's a process. We've lived our whole lives with who we are, and in order to get it, to change it, it takes time. It's not something that's just going to be, you get saved and it's a snap of the finger, and all this stuff that you inherited in your DNA and in all the things that you learned, the bad habits and the bad things you learned, are just going to magically disappear. They're not. That comes through a process of sanctification, and so, which can be, a lifetime. Because, depending on how much baggage you have, more baggage, the longer it takes. So, the idea, and that's pretty much the reason why I wanted to bring this up, was because, and we know, if we're honest, that that there was a lot of atrocities went on from especially English Europeans that came over here, but the French too, against the Native Americans. But then they would team up with these Native American tribes and fight against other tribes or fight against each other. So it's, when you look at it from that perspective, it's like everybody, there's enough blame and fault to go around, all of them. Because there was some of them that were, just as bloodthirsty as the Europeans. I mean, and they attacked some of the peaceful tribes and the what they call the civilized tribes. The Oneida Confederation. But and it, what really triggered it? We wasn't there. So we really don't know. We just going by what somebody wrote down, some historian or somebody did, and they're telling you their version of it. And I'm sure you could dig around and find another version of it, and you can find the Native American version of it. But nobody's really, going to be 100% sure about exactly what happened, because we wasn't there. We're just relying on what somebody said, and not only that, but as time has gone by, people's memories, of events kind of tend to get clouded. But, when it comes down to it, you can just look back in history, and like I said, going all the way back to Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, it's been war and conflict ever since. And, some of the worst atrocities that people do are against their own people, which has nothing to do with race. Like I said, the Cultural Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, and, the other, conflicts that are similar to that. But mostly, some of the worst has been through these communist revolutions and stuff. And I think that's, one of the things that's coming is that whatever form of government that it ends up taking is going to be probably communist socialism. Because these people here in this country that are bent on socialism, they want socialism. And it's mostly a lot of these young people that really... they just are naive and not really, learned. They've been indoctrinated in the school system that the government's supposed to, take care of them from cradle to grave. And so they've got this entitlement mentality that they're supposed to be taken care of. And of course, that's socialism. And socialism is just, a handshake away from communism. I mean, really, it's the same thing. It's not really that different. They're really both the same thing. Same thing with all these people who's going to destroy our democracy. Well, this ain't a democracy. This is a constitutional republic. Democracy is just a stepping stone between the republic and communism, socialism. But this is the kind of thing that is in the heart of men, and it's usually people that want power and want to lord over other people. And they're driven because of the lust for power in their own heart. These entities, the fallen ones, like I said, they study human nature. They know how we are. They know how to appeal to people based on what their own lust is. And that's what they go after. They go after these people's lust and use it as a means to manipulate them into doing whatever it is they want to do. Now, granted, the Father has ultimate say over it because He says He creates the evil and the good and the evil. He controls all of it. Because it says, I am Yahweh, and there is no other. But he regulates it based on people's hearts. The wickeder people get, then the worse things he allows to happen to them. Especially when you have this mass madness that takes hold of people, where they do these kind of things, where they just get in a fit of rage or bloodlust, and they get out there and they just massacre and kill everything that moves. That is demonically driven, but it comes from their own hearts. And so these demonic entities and these fallen entities, they just prey on it. When they see, they see these patterns that develop over in the Father's same way, with His way. It's patterns. If we follow His pattern, then we can't go into doing this stuff. If we follow His pattern, but when you begin to follow their pattern, you see it's over and over again, and it's sort of like the old saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you keep doing the same stuff, ultimately it always winds up in destruction. And like it says there in Deuteronomy 28, that they end up being given over to madness. And that's what usually, when it gets to that stage, that's when you start seeing these massacres and bloodlust, where they just, and they target a certain group. And of course, I think that group eventually is going to be true believers that they're going to target. They're going to come after the true believers, and it's going to be bloodlust. And they're the ones that'll say that they're doing the will of God. And yet they'll, kill you. And say they're doing His will. Well, they're not doing the will of Yahweh. They're doing the will of their God, the false God. But I wanted to read one other scripture here. Actually a couple more. I got one in John 16. 16 and 22. Let's see. That's not one I wanted there. Revelation 6:4. Revelation 6:4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. Of course, this is talking about the horsemen of the apocalypse, but I think that really these horses have been riding all along since the time of Christ. But their intensity has been getting ever greater, because he said in Matthew 24 that they would be wars and rumors of wars and pestilences and plagues, but they would increase in severity the closer you got to the end. So I think these four horsemen have been riding all along. And the pale sickly horse, or the word there in the Greek is chloros, which is green, a green, pale, sickly looking horse that death and hell rides. It says, death rides this green horse and hell follows behind him. Well, I think that is this religious system that's coming. And I think it's Chrislam, it's the joining together of the the Catholics and these apostate Christian, Protestant churches and Islam, because it says that they are given power over a 1/4 of the earth. Well, between those two, there's about 2 billion people under those two religions. And, under Christianity and under Islam. So that'd be about 1/4 of the earth's population. And it says that they're given power over 1/4 of the earth to kill with the sword and with the plagues and with pestilence. That means that this 1/4 of the earth has power to kill with the sword and with pestilence and with plagues. And when you look at these so-called things that have been released intentionally from labs, that these things are, I believe they're being orchestrated because this is going to be a powerful block. And in fact, I can't remember right offhand what scripture it is, but it's in the Old Testament where it talks about Israel making a pact with death and hell. And I think that's what it's referring to. It's referring to this religious, and they make it through deceit. Israel makes this pact with them through deceit because it's called the overflowing scourge, because they're going to be going around the world trying to enforce their religion. And ultimately, the leader of it, I guess it's the false prophet, is going to enforce worship of the Antichrist. But at the same time, it talks about how that these kings that rule with him will hate the harlot, this religious system, and they'll completely burn her up with fire, which is, I guess going to nuke her or something. But anyway, I'm kind of getting away from what I was talking about. But I'm talking about with this here, how that's that this horse, and I think it represents these entities that or a entity that is going through the world that has been constantly creating wars and these atrocities. They get behind one person that has this lust for, that has this just lust for power and lust for blood. And they get behind that person and they elevate them up to a position of power, and then they begin, and they usually will be somebody that is able to communicate, that can speak, that can, draw people to them, charismatic. And so they're able to kind of stir these people up. And if you look at what's going on here, how they're trying to make out one group of people as being, fascist and, violent, but really they're the ones doing, it's called projection. They project what they're doing onto the other group. And people that are blind spiritually are they're the ones that, are with these people because they can't see it for what it really is. They've been given over to a reprobate mind. They're going to see what their reprobate mind is going to let them see. And they're going to believe it. They just followed blindly. And that's the same kind of thing that you've seen there in Nazi Germany and these other places where these things have gone on and are continuing to go on. I mean, in some of these countries, they, this kind of stuff, going, and now, it is kind of an ethnic thing, where they're going after people because of religious belief or because of what ethnic group they're from, and they're persecuting them and stuff and killing them. So, again, this is a human thing, a human condition. It's not, has nothing to do with race. Sometimes it just happens that it's a different race that they're doing it to, but it really atrocities of, the human condition. And so it, shows, this here tells us that that's just the nature of the human heart. But the Father can deliver us from that through what Christ did on the cross. But we have to acknowledge that, and we have to accept that and allow Him to work in us. And again, like I said, it's a process. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And most people probably don't, as a normal rule, have this bloodlust. But it's laying there, dormant. That it's possible in anybody. People will tend to say, well, I would never do that, man. Ain't nothing going to make me do that. Well, except that the Father and Yahushua intervene and through the Ruach to change your heart. You could do it too. I could do it. Anybody could. Because just there in Jeremiah is telling us that. That's all people. It says the heart of man is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. So that's talking about all humanity. But there is people that, when He moves, when His Ruach moves, that their heart desires to be changed. And so the Father will work with that person. But there's those that when it moves, they reject it and they don't receive it. And so He can't cleanse those people because they don't want to be cleansed. They don't want to be changed. They want to keep doing the same things they were doing. Because they love the things of the flesh more than they love Elohim. And so I just kind of wanted to make that point about the human atrocities that have been committed throughout history, that it really just boils down to the human heart. It really doesn't, race ain't got nothing to do with it. It just has to do with the human condition. And so I'm going to end on that. But on another note, I just want to say about, these pagan holidays and stuff that's coming up. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then, spring will be the Easter. And of course, this is something that everybody's got to search their heart and, concerning it. But I'll pose a question to you. The scripture says we're supposed to be set apart, that we're a peculiar people, and that we are to come out of Babylon, the world system, the global system, whatever you want to call it, the beast system. Well, if the world's doing it, and we're supposed to be set apart, seems to me that ought to tell you something. Because if all these cultures around the world are taking part in this, and pretty much the whole world does, then that ought to tell you something. Because the majority of the world is not going to be saved. A small remnant is. So, just think about that. If the majority's doing it, should you be? Folks, I just want to say thank you for watching. I love you. I hope you be blessed. And as always, be a good Berean. Do your homework. Receive what I say with an open mind, but search the scriptures to see whether these things be so. And until next time, if Yahweh willing, I'll see you again.